Okay, here we go. Hi everyone, shalom lekulam. This meetup will be in English. I'm happy and proud to host Tayob Ali today. I put a few links in the chat instead of presenting a slide deck and so on. I just put the links in the chat. So if you want to check it out, all kinds of useful links for our Meetup, Facebook group, Telegram group, and so on and so on. It's all in the chat. Today, we have a session about SQL assessment. If you want to get recommendations about SQL Server best practices, there are many of them ready for you. And there is an API and so on and so on. Tayob Ali is going to talk about it. So Tayob, it's all yours.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you very much for the opportunity and for hosting me. Unfortunately, my chat is not coming up, so I cannot see at all. It says refresh. I'm trying to refresh, but it's not working. So you have to let me know if there's any question. This is first time. I have no idea why everything else is working except the chat. I can even see that in the list and everything else.
Okay.
So yeah,
so if anyone has questions during the session or comments or anything, please write them in the chat, and I monitor the chat and I'll let you know.
Okay, so I'm going to get started. Thanks everyone for joining. So we will be talking about SQL assessment. And since actually I submitted this talk, I noticed that the abstract changed a little bit. They actually added a bunch of rules in July this year. So it was about 245. It's actually 313 rules today. So Microsoft has done some awesome job. If you're not talking, if you can mute, that would be nice. As reading the notes, when preparing for this talk, so there's been a bunch of stuff has been done around availability group and Azure VM and stuff. So this is nice. Now, this is a work day for you in Israel. This is the end of the day. Why would you listen to me, right? Why would you spend 1 hour taking out of your family time? Has to be a reason. So I'll make a short pitch so it makes some sense. If you are using SQL Server, doesn't matter what flavor, right? It's in Azure in managed instance, SQL Server and Azure VM, on-premises, different versions. And if you want to know if you are following the best practices that is recommended by Microsoft. So these rules are written by Microsoft engineers who are writing this software, and they are recommending this. And if you're managing, I'm sure, most of us are not just managing a handful of servers. Most of us are probably working on hundreds and thousands of databases and servers. And if you're a consultant, this is also works very good for you because you are moving from client to client, right? So within few minutes, running few commands, you have a pretty good idea about the state of their database and servers. So, even if you're a full-time employee or a consultant, I think it can be helpful for all of us. So I'm not going to read this, but before I go further, I'm using a tool called Azure Data Studio. This is written by Microsoft, very lightweight tool, works in multi-platform. And the reason I say it's a lightweight because it's extension-based, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And I'm using something called Notebook and a PowerShell kernel. There are a bunch of other kernels, means you can use other Python, SQL, Custo, but I'm using PowerShell. So the advantage of this is, in a nutshell, I can write my comments, I can write PowerShell commands, I can add pictures, I can save the result and ship it to someone, right? Or I can save it for my own use. And I will share all this with Guy, and he can send you a link. You will be able to download all of this. So you do not need to take note, download, edit, play with it, send me questions. What environment you can use this? On-premises SQL Server 2012. I know SQL Server 2012 went out of mainstream support in July, but you can still use this if you have few. I have few I'm trying to get rid of, so don't feel bad. SQL Server on Azure virtual machines, managed instance, Linux-based systems. And also there is the extension that I'll show you. So if some of you say, I don't have time with all this PowerShell, whatever you showed me, I'll show you a GUI-based solution also at the end. So stay tuned. There is a SQL Assessment API. that you can take advantage, and there are some PowerShell commands that we can use, which I'll show you. All the demos that I'll be using is all PowerShell notebooks, and at the end I'm going to show you that extension. I also put some references because most of this material is actually I copied from Microsoft open source, right? So I haven't written any of this by myself. I'm just trying to spread the news because a lot of people are not aware of it. So other people can take advantage. And these are my contacts. I can share that at the end. So if once you download this, if you have any question, comments, you have any problems setting it up, you can send me a line, shoot me a quick tweet or email, and I'll get back to you. And all these notebooks, I'll upload in my GitHub. I'll refresh it. They're already there, but I made a lot of changes, especially with the new rules and all. So you get a fresh copy. I'll do this by end of today. So that's pretty much what we're going to talk about. These are all demos. There's no slides. We'll dive into the demo right away. And put your questions, as Guy said. Unfortunately, I cannot see the chat for some reason. I have no clue why. And I'll answer the questions. And you can put it anytime. I do not mind stopping and answering your questions. So let's dive into this. So before I show you what I did, all these rules come in a JSON format. Also, they come in a CSV file. So what I did, I loaded all this into a SQL Server table, right? It's my local instance, SQL 2019. I just wanted to see how many rules are there, what kind, just give you a brief overview, right? So they're all loaded into this table. And I'm just going to run some queries against it. Very simple T-SQL, all of you know. So there's total of 313 rules. It's just a random top 5. There's no order. Each rule has an ID, and we'll use some of these. We'll use the ID. Rules have tags. I'm going to use these tags, and I'll tell you how you can take advantage of this. Each rule also has a label. So is it low, medium, informational, critical? Has a name. You can also take advantage of the names. There is a short description. There's also a URL where you can read more. That's why Microsoft created this rule. What is the best practice? The scope of this rules. Is it a database scope or a server scope? Can you run it on Windows, on Linux? Because there are some rules that only works on Windows-based SQL Server, not on Linux. Some are both. It tells us if we can run it in on-premises, also on managed instance, minimum version, and there are some exceptions. Sometimes like these rules doesn't apply for master MSDB and TempDB. This one doesn't apply even for the model. This two applies for the model. And there are some threshold and limits. So just showing you, a brief overview of what it is. And I did a bunch of this thing to show you it's a database server. There's some null, because what happened is Microsoft released a rule for SQL Server 2012. Now with the release of 2019, the recommendation changed for 2019 version. But Microsoft still has the 2012 rule, so they have an override rule, right? That's why some of these doesn't have a target type. If these are an override kind of rule, they put it as a null. They could have done this with the same scope, but they haven't done that. So these are some of the categories of different level. Target platform, as I said, there's 66 for Windows, there's 212 for Windows and Linux, and these are override rules, so they don't categorize those. There are also engine versions, so there are, like these 6 rules is only for Express version. So if you try to run it against a developer version or enterprise, it will say that you have the wrong target. The minimum version of SQL Server Engine. And, I just put some of these are my favorites. There is, it doesn't have to be your favorite. I'll show you some of this in the next demo. So that's kind of just give you a glimpse of, what it is before we dive, deeper into this. So I'm going to close this. So let's just start with a couple of my favorite ones, and then I have another notebook which will go, into a little bit deeper. And again, put your questions if I'm going too fast, if something doesn't make sense. So we'll be primarily using two PowerShell commands, which I'll give you the link to read more about it and know all the switches that are available. But before I get there, just to show you briefly, you always need this module, SQL Server Module. I know many of us use DBA tools nowadays, so you're not much into SQL Server Module, but for these commands, you need that. If you do not have this, you can install it using this command. I already installed it, so I'm going to import it. And then you can see the version that I have. I'm going to declare some variables. These are standard PowerShell commands, so I don't have to type this all the time. And now I'm going to do an Invoke Sql Assessment, and I'll talk about this a little bit more. And my scope of running this is an instance. So what is this variable pointing to? It's pointing to my local named instance that's running SQL Server 2019, right? I also have another one if I want to go to database scope, and I have a path where I have some customized scripts. But I'll talk about more of those later on. So if I run this now, this is I'm using a name of a rule. I could also use a tag or a name or ID. And this is just checking if I have any duplicated feature. And one thing I'm not going to do during this presentation, I'm not going to go into the output because there are 313 rules. If we're going to talk about all this, we'll be here all day. For you, will be till midnight. So my goal is really not to what is the best practice, why this best, like we can talk about TempDB for an hour, right? We can talk about max memory setting for half an hour. If we go into this, we can talk about indexes for hours. So that's really not my goal, right? My goal is to just show you how to use this. So I'll immediately ignore the results. So because we just don't have time, this is the 1 hour session. So this is going to show
SQL assessment. Sorry, the Invoke SQL Assessment commandlet is part of the SQL Server Module.
Yes, and I'll talk about that more details later on where you can get it. I also have two URL to read more about, look at the switches, what are all the possibilities. Okay. This is just, I'm showing you just a primer to use it quickly. One of the things that, another good recommendation you'll see always from Microsoft TempDB files should be same size. Now, why? It's going to take us 15 minutes to talk about it, so I'm not going to go there. So just for a demo purpose, if I do this, I have a couple of things to make things bad just to show you. So I'm going to make one of my TempDB file size different than the others, right? Just making it 10 megabyte. Others are all 8 megabytes. So, and now if I run this, it will tell me that these are not same size. And when I'm showing this, you might think, oh, why do I need to all this? I can just go and look at it. Imagine if you are managing 1,000 servers and you go to a new place, they ask you to, just give us the best practice. You can run this against 1,000 servers in a minute and give them the report and say, go and fix this, right? You don't have to go to every server or, write some loops or cursors or whatever. And I'll also show you how to do this in few lines, run against thousands of servers. I'll show that at the end. Now, if I go and fix this, I bring it back to 8 meg again. And now if I run this, it is not going to report anything. It means I have everything in order. How many times, I don't know if you have, I encountered this, login and password is same, especially in development environment, right? And sometimes we do refresh production data into development and people use, login with same password if you give them, let them do it. Or weak password, right? In that case. So now there is a command. So you're going to create a login just for demo purpose. I know it's a bad thing, so I'm not going to leave it there. And now if I run this, it actually tells me that I have a username with the same password. And there's also another rule for a weak password. So you can use that too. Now, if I delete that, run this again, I don't have anything to report. This is purposely creating some duplicate indexes. And just for this demo purpose. Again, please, if you think your indexes are duplicate and not being used, do not just see this recommendation and go and start deleting stuff. Make sure you understand your workload, going to drop indexes and all that, right? Look at your reports. Maybe reports used once a month or something. But this can give you a report of your duplicate indexes. This can give you a report of unused indexes. And like again, I said, don't go and start deleting. I just created this so they just see in the DMP that this hasn't been used, so they are reporting this. Max memory is another one. I'm going to bypass this. You can check. Oftentimes, you see if you open a case with Microsoft with the performance, Microsoft will always ask you to check your power plant, right? This is a ignored setting that people don't pay attention, right? And this can impact your CPU cycle time. And I know we are all talking about global warming. We need to be green, but if I'm paying a few $1,000s per core in my enterprise edition, I think I don't want to be green there, and I want to squeeze as much as I can from my CPU. So that's not the time for me to be green, right? I can be green in other places. I'm not taking it lightly, but not on my production servers, right? When I'm paying that much money. So this is another quick check. If you have thousands of servers, that this is not using high performance power plant, and I can now change it, right? And you can. This is a tiny PowerShell command. Actually, it's pretty neat. It gives you all your options that you can change your memory plan. This is my personal laptop, so you see like Dell and all that. And now I switched it to high performance. Now I'm not going to see this anymore. Percent auto grows, right? So this is another, not a good idea to have it. You should probably have a fixed amount of, for your auto growth. So just to make it bad, say if I change something to 10%, right, which is not recommended because as you grow, then it's growing to a bigger chunk, right? And especially if it's a log file, you have, your VLFs and other stuffs are not in your control. So now it tells me that I have a setting with auto, in percent auto growth, right? Which is not the best practice. I now change it to a fixed amount. I think it's a 64 meg. And now if I run this, I do not get anything. So these are just, a couple of my favorite ones. Let's dive into a little bit more deeper now. Before I go there, if any of you want to get a quick start, I'll share this notebook. I'm not going to show this because everything here is actually in this notebook too. But this is a very quick get start notebook. And these are not written by me. I modified those for this talk. These are actually also on the GitHub repo. You can download directly from Microsoft's website, Microsoft repo. And I also put the link into the resource page. So I modified it a little bit for our purpose. So I'm going to go here. This is where we will be spending a lot of time, probably about half an hour. I also wrote a bunch of notes for us, and I'm not going to read all this because you can read in your own time if you want to. This is where you can download the rule set in JSON or in CSV if you want to load it like me in a SQL Server table, because that's what I'm. It's just easier for me to look at instead of looking at a huge CSV or JSON file. I can dump it into a table and I can aggregate and look at a few things. Guy, you were asking me about these two commands, so I put a short description of these two commands that we'll be using. And if you click this link, it will actually take you to the page directly where you can really read more and look at the code and look at a bunch of examples. I did that for both. So far, I have used Invoke Sql Assessment. I haven't used this, but I'll be using it now. With this one, you do not have to run the rules, but you can see that if I run this command, or within this scope, what are the rules apply, right? So I can get a list of the rules without running the rules. But I can also pipe it to the second command and run those rules. So you can combine those two, which I'll show you. Again, I'm not going to talk more about this. You can go there and read more about it. So pretty much everything I put enough comments for you to follow up. Like if you have a SQL Server module, make sure the minimum version is this. I know I have a higher version. You need that. And I also put links in between my comments, so you need to read more if you want to, if you're interested. So all the resources are embedded into these notebooks. There's another thing you will see that oftentimes we all know that for a best practice purpose, we keep our XP commercial disabled. There are a few commands still depending on that, and Microsoft is actually aware of it. I put a note here that they're aware of it, and this is actually the exact response I got from the product team. So they are working on it to use the .NET API. So going forward, even though your XP commercial is disabled, you will be able to run all the commands. Till that is done, the recommendation will be, if you are using PowerShell, to turn it on, run your commands, and then disable it again, right? For security purpose. So there are few commands depend on that. So let's dive into some more examples. I'm putting this, getting the MySQL instance and then pipe to Invoke Sql Assessment. So what this will do, this will run only the rules that's scoped for a server, not for database, right? Because I'm passing a server name. And while this is running, as I said before, I'm not going to, read the output because we don't have time. But I also put option 3, 4, 5, 6. They will all give us the same output. It's just, different people have different tests of running, things, and people code it differently. I just wanted to put it, if you're using, these are all same commands. Let's put it that way. You can run this in many different ways.
It will invoke all the rules that are relevant for my specific target?
Yeah, just for the server, yes. Yes.
Not just server, but the version and addition.
Yeah,
so
it will figure out itself. Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. It knows that it's a 2019, it's on-premises SQL Server, so it's not going to run the one that's specific to select managed instance or an older version, select 2012, 14, or 16. Yes, it will automatically figure it out. But if you pass a target, and then if you put an ID for a command, for managed instance, it will say that this target doesn't apply for this command. It will give you a clear error message or a notification. So I talked about, that it works for managed instance and all that. So what I did, just for demo purpose, I spinned up a SQL Server on Azure VM. Just an image from the marketplace, SQL Server 2019, Developer Edition running on SQL Server Windows 2022. I am using the public IP because it's just a demo. This is something I do not recommend. You definitely should use private network. Do not expose your public IP. But I wanted to show you that this also works for SQL Server on Azure VM, and it will also work for managed instance if you have it. So again, I'm getting a SQL instance, same as before, but here I'm passing the public IP address of that VM, and I can run the commands here. I'm not showing you my password. I'm reading it from here. But you can pass credentials in different way. So as you can see, these few commands got skipped because my XP command shell is turned off. But it did check the other rules, right? And it gave me some recommendations. There are some deprecated features. It's saying that I do not really need these 2 trace flags anymore from 2016, but I think the market image has those trace flags turned on probably. That's what it's giving us. So I'm not going to go into more, but this shows that you can run this against your SQL Server running on Azure VM or managed instances, but please do not follow, what I'm showing you right here, right? That'll be a disaster. You don't want to expose this to outside world. So we run this in a server scope, right? Or at the instance scope. So let's come down to database now. So here, I'm passing just a single database, right? And then I'm running the assessment. I could also run the assessment for all the database in an instance at one line command, and I'll show you that later on. And here also I have option 2 and option 3. They're really doing the same thing, just so you know. It's just a different way of writing the same command. This is taking a little bit longer than I expected. Okay, good. Okay, so again, it's probably a long list because, this is my test database. I do a bunch of stuff here. I'm just going to get rid of the output just to keep the window a little bit smaller. This is going to run the command. I'm not going to run this. It takes a little bit longer. I have a bunch of databases. With this command, you can run the same rules against every database in a single instance, including your system databases, because I'm taking all my databases in this variable, passing it to the command. So far I've talked about just this one rule, right? We haven't used the get SQL assessment item. So if I run this, now it's not running any command. It's not evaluating anything. Here it's just telling me that for this resource, these are all the rules that apply. So if you run this, I'm going to evaluate all these rules against this instance. Or if you pass a database. Here I can see all the rules that apply to master database. And again, I'm not running it. I'm just, as you can see, it's a very small set, right? Compared to the other ones. There's none of the trace flags are here. And now I can also check with the severity, right? I can use that. I can pass that if I want to evaluate just the one that with the warning and above. I can use a tag, right? So if we go here, you see all these tags, right? So there's a trace flag tag. I can say, give me all the rules for this server that has a tag about with trace flag. So you can narrow it, right? If you have a specific requirement, you can take advantage of this. That's my point of showing this. Now, I can also run a specific rule with a name, right? So I don't get anything. Now, if I turn this on, I think it's going to give me a warning. Yep. Tells you that. So let's turn that off. Try it again. Shouldn't be getting anything. Oh, this is by ID. And I think I showed the tag again. So there's another one with the performance tag. So this is going to evaluate all the rules that has a tag with performance. It's pretty long, get rid of it. Oh, it's still running. Yeah, I think I ran it against all the databases, so it's going to take, okay, it's done. Yep. Now here, what I can do in PowerShell, there's a cool switch called Passthrough with the outgrid view. If you haven't used it, look it up. So what this lets me do, gives me a list. I can pick from here, and then it will only run those. So if I press, I don't know, take this one out. I'm just picking randomly. So, and now it should, that's interesting. Or maybe it doesn't apply the two that I picked up. So maybe I should pick a few more. Yeah, okay. So out of those, one, so you can do that too if you want to. You can interactively choose the one that you want to run. Now, so far I've been looking at these results, on the screen, right? And I said you can run it against hundreds and thousands of servers database. What do you do with the results set, right? You cannot be looking at the screen and trying to figure out what you're going to do. You can, for us, I mean, like for me, I work with SQL Server. So an obvious place will be to save it in a SQL Server, right? Or if you're working in enterprise setting, I'm sure all of you have your own DBA database or your DBA warehouse, whatever you call it. So you can do that. There is a command called write SQL data table. I'm saving it to my local instance. I give it a database name, schema, and a table name, right? So I'm going to save this result in a table that later on I can go and use this command to look at that result set. And now, once you have it in a SQL Server table, you can, all of you know aggregation, like group by, sort, whatever you want to do to look at your results. If you have thousands of servers database, you can group by whatever you want. And I'm not going to go into this, but just so you know, Azure Data Studio also has another extension. Sundance is pretty cool. You can actually go and play with this and create a graph. Gives you some visualization of how bad it is, where you want to tackle it, and especially if you are if you take over go to a new company or new consulting, you might want to do this at the beginning, maybe do this weekly and see how you are fixing the problem and report it to whoever you need to report to. So you can do that. Okay, so yeah, you can save this in a table and then do so. So far, we've been talking about all the standard rules, right? Whatever Microsoft gave us. Now, what will happen if it doesn't fit your requirement, right? So Microsoft has backup thresholds, Microsoft has transaction log thresholds. They have all kinds of thresholds, max memory, cost threshold of parallelism, 10 DB files, and on. But you might have a edge case that that's optimal for your workload, but it doesn't fit into the default rule that Microsoft gave you, right? So you want to do some customization, and that's also possible. And I wrote a bunch of notes again, right, to get you started. There are, if you're writing your own rules, there are some DLLs that you need to load. There's some Stack Overflow discussion. So please read all this if you're doing any of this work. So let's look at that. So what you're going to do is here for the VLF count, right? And again, I'm not going to go into details. Virtual log files, you should keep the numbers at a reasonable number of virtual log files, because if your auto growth is set to very low, you can end up with, on a bigger database, you can end up with thousands of virtual log files, and that has some other implications. So I'm not going to get there. There are, a lot of smart people like Paul Randall and other people's blog about it, so go and read about that. So if I run this, right, it says that I'm exceeding the limit, right? So Microsoft put a limit of virtual log files of 50, and it says if it's more than that, then it should report, right? So if we go here, maybe we can look at this. So if you come here, you see the threshold is 50. Now, what will happen if you have like a multi-terabyte database with a, like a 2 terabyte log file, right? Or I don't know, like a 1 terabyte log file. Even you follow all the best practices, you probably have more than 50 VLFs, right? And you know that, and you don't want to get alerted every time. So what do we do with this, right? So this is complaining about this now. I can override these rules that for one of my database, I'm okay with, um, whatever number. So actually, I need to change this before I upload. I had a different example, and that rule is broken. So I did send them a note. So let me show you this. So give me a minute. How can you override? So I'll show you that. So now I'm saying for the rule name VLF count, I'm okay with 150, right? And this is where I'm using my override. Now you say I don't get any warning. What I can also do, I can say, I'm only going to override for one of my database. For other databases, if I have more than 50, I want to get notified, but not for AdventureWorks. So now I'm going to only get warning about this database, but not for the AdventureWorks, whereas here I was getting for both. Any question here?
All clear.
No, okay. Okay. I'm going to change this description before I send it to you. This is again, same thing, how you can override the max memory settings. I'm not going to repeat the same. I can also enable and disable rules, right? If I know that there are certain rules that I really do not need, I know I'm all good there. I only want to evaluate my, my state with a subset of rules. I can go and disable those. So let's look at that. I'm setting up some variables. And now there is a rule with the trace flag 634, which is about column store compression that works in the background. And I want to disable it. I don't want to run it every time. So I can have a small JSON file in my folder, and I can point to that. It's a very simple one. I can just say ID, item type override, and change the value to false. And now you will see that this is set to false. So next time, if I run all the rules for trace flag 634, this is going to ignore this rule. It's not going to evaluate against this one. And I put some, some code to test it if you want to. I can also disable all trace flag rules. So like I do not want to evaluate any trace flags if I want to. And you can do that by the tag in a JSON file. I can also say disable all trace flags, but enable the one with the performance related ones. Because if you have noticed there, the rules have many tags. They all have a default rule set, but you see this one? So what I'm saying, if you only have trace flag, disable it. If you have the both tag, do not do that. So you can take advantage of this. And now if I do this, you'll see the certain ones are true and the certain ones are false. You can also make your own rules. You can write your own rules, SQL, CLR, WMI counters, all that. But there are some requirements. So, read my notes. I'm just going to show you a simple one. It's a T-SQL one. Again, I even didn't write it myself. I want to be very upfront. I did. You'll find this in a GitHub. I put the link here. All this is doing, it's checking the free space for data and log file, and it set the threshold to 25%. And I set that to 25 purposely just to make another point. And now it's going to do all the other rules, but it is also going to evaluate your custom rule, right? It says there is a custom rule set. And once you make a custom rule set, you can also override your own rule if you want to. So I showed you that I set the threshold to 25%. Here I'm overriding with a 10% rule, right? So, you have that luxury too to do that. And now I don't get a warning because I changed the threshold. So I'm not going to, you can do like PowerShell with the registry, WMI, CLR, all kind of. So, and I also put few more links. If you're interested to write your own rules, go and read those. Okay, so I talked about, so far what I've shown you, I've only shown you things that are running against databases in a single server, single database, single server, all the databases within a instance, right? I don't know how many of you are aware of CMS, which is, we call it Central Management Server, right? So what you can do, I don't, this is my personal machine, but if you do not know, just look it up, what's a CMS, Central Management. You can register all your servers and then categorize those, have groups and stuff. And there's also something called DBA Tools. It's an open source. Chrissy from Europe, she manages this. There is hundreds of contributors from the community. And these are all, I think, 500 plus PowerShell commands. So combining that and with these commands that I've already shown you, you can do something like this. I'm not going to run this. So you can get all your servers from your register servers. This is a DBA Tools command, right? So if you just point it to your CMS server name, you can also give a group, right? So you can start with dev, QA. If you have it grouped in the CMS, you can get those servers. You can just write a for each loop, right? And then you can run this, and then you can write it into a table that way I showed you. So now you can run this against as many servers or as many databases as you wish to, and then dump all into your warehouse, the DBA warehouse or whatever you call this. And then you go run some T-SQL to see how bad or good you are, or your servers and databases. Any question here?
What's missing here is the database level checks, right? This only checks server level.
Yeah, I can give, so I can go one step further, right? Within the loop, I can just do the same, take the commands from my other notebooks, pass it, and I can go into each server and do the databases also, right? Or I can just, just because I'm already at a server level in the loop, I can just write here like get databases and pass it again, right? And dump it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. But probably I should add that. This is a good point. Maybe for next time. So if people taking my notebook, they already have it ready, right? So it's a good point, guys. So yeah, I can just add 2 more lines here and then test it.
Okay, there's a question in the chat. Avi asks if we can check availability groups as well.
Yeah, you can. So, I don't have the setup here, but if we go here, actually, let me show you the release note. The July release is a mind blowing. So instead of me talking, look at this. Actually, this is also mirroring endpoint. Nice. There's actually more. So these are just added after I submitted the session to you. So I was preparing and I was refreshing, and these are not there when I talked with you, and because I saw like the rule numbers a lot more. I'm like, what happened? So so there's bunch of, look at these.
Yeah.
So if you have availability groups, you can take advantage of some of this and come up with some monitoring solution.
Nice.
And there are a bunch of bug fixes. The backup ones doesn't work. I reported it before. I think I'm going to report again with some examples. So I think they need a little bit more info to fix it. It was working last year. Suddenly something happened and it broke. So and there's some confusion about the password one that I have to give some feedback to them. So any other questions or comments?
I have two questions. One of them is about security. The other one is about performance. So first, security. What permissions do you need to run those assessments against the SQL Server targets? Is it sysadmin or is it something else?
No, I think I got that question before. Hold on. So this is a good one. Someone asked me this before, and I think it's probably in one of the notebook comments. I don't remember. Whoever asked that question, otherwise I'll probably send you, if they can just ping me on the side, I'll find that. I knew this, but I don't want to. I'm sure I probably have this in one of the notebooks, but I'm not certain. If not, I'll add it. Why don't I add it into the notebook before I refresh it and send it to you?
Okay.
Thanks. So I'll add it before I send you the link for my GitHub repo.
And the other question is about the performance impact of those assessments. There are many rules. Each one is running something behind the scenes, and I guess at least some of the rules might run heavy queries. How can we know if we can trust, if we can run those assessments against the production server?
Yeah, so number one is written by Microsoft. That's why I would trust.
That's not a good enough answer.
No, not a good enough answer. I get that. That's why we don't just go to production with the CTP version or the release candidate, right? So we all know that. In my experience, I do run this at my workplace. Most of this actually looking at system objects, right? DMV, DMF, system views, so should be harmless. None of these are really going into my user workload space. These are pretty much all metadata configurations. So that gives me a comfort that this should be safe, right? Because, but again, I would, like I said, if it's me, I ran this. All my SQL instances are grouped. By app, and I have different tiers and all that. So I would not go and start just running here without the group, right? I would probably start with dev, run it few days, go to QA. Whatever is your release cycle, I would follow that same thing here, right? And see, what happens, right? Or maybe go with a smaller scale. Here, instead of CMS, if you're not using, you can also pass a CSV file. Just dump in 20 server names that are less critical, dump a CSV, and actually this can, there's another command, you don't use this one, but just get object from a CSV file, you get the server names, and then you can do a for each loop, right? So start with small, start with your non-critical, tier 3, tier 4, and go up, right? That's all I can say. I don't think if anybody gives you a number will be accurate. I cannot say, okay, this is going to add 2.5% workload or something, right? It's just useless, those numbers. So I would I would just run it in your own environment. But again, what I said, I think most of these are running against system objects, so shouldn't be a big deal. Yeah. Anything else?
Thanks.
Okay, so I'll definitely add the permission notes into one of the notebooks before I upload. That's a good question. And the other one was an example of a database, what Guy said in this notebook. So I'll do both before I upload this today or tomorrow.
Great. Thanks.
So last thing, we are almost to the end. If any of you say I'm too busy, I cannot do any of this, I don't have time, but I like what you showed us. You go to extension, download Azure Data Studio, it's free, written by Microsoft. You can trust it. I think people are using it all over the world nowadays. There's an extension called SQL Assessment. And if you do not have it, the best way to find it, just type here, do a search, you'll see it here. And you click this, and mine shows disabled because I enabled it. So you enable it. And as you can see, this is a Microsoft release because there are third-party extensions. There are people you can write your own extensions if you want to. So you can trust this one. Now, once you have that, if you connect to a server, you'll see something here called SQL Assessment. A side note, in Azure Data Studio, anything you are seeing here, SQL Agent, machine learning, SQL migration, these are all due to extension. That's why I said this is a very lightweight tool. If you enable extension, what do you need? If you don't need something, do not enable it. Or enable it, do your work, and then disable it. You can keep it as light as you want or make it as heavy as you want. So now, if I click this, it brings us to this page. So let's minimize this, get a little bit more real estate. Now, without doing anything, I can come here and I can see Invoke Assessment. Just one click. This is going to do server and all databases in a click. One thing you cannot do here is to do hundreds of servers at the same time, right? That's the disadvantage. But again, you're doing this because you don't want to write PowerShell. So, so that's why you probably don't get the advantage of the same people that are writing PowerShell. So, and you really don't have to write it. These are, just simple pipelines that I showed you. But anyway, so once you are done with this, now you can filter, right? You can come here and say, I just want to see if anything wrong with my TMDB. And now it's going to, reduce your result set, right? And you say clear, you can see all. You can see the applicable rules. You can also, the cool thing is it gives you a table. It even gives you the table definition with all the answers. So you can just dump it into a table right away. You can just connect it to a SQL Server instance, give it a database, and it will load it for you, right? Without doing anything. You can do that. And I love this one. Especially, I don't do consulting. Some of you do, I know. So how cool this will be. If you go to a new place and within a few minutes, you can give them a HTML report, right? And then charge them some money to fix it, right? So with a couple of clicks without writing anything. It also keeps a history. That's interesting. I don't know why it won't show you, but yeah, I have no idea. I tested this before it was working. Anyway, probably a bug. You can also takes you to the GitHub page that I've been talking about, where you have all this. So, I mean, I have the link in few pages. You don't need to use this, but I'm just showing you. So that's the extension that's written by Microsoft. Download it, enable it, and then you can use it. So
nice.
Yeah, you can also, there's filters by severity, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much what I have. So I'm going to show you my contacts again. So I have 2 action items. I'll do those. So I'll stay here for any questions, comments, or anything.
Yeah, if you have any questions, now is a good time.
Yes.
Either through the chat or you can open your mics, whatever.
Yeah. Hopefully this
What
was
is the,
some
I have a
use.
question. What is the pace of creating new rules by Microsoft, more or less? I mean, they create new rules every month?
No, I'll be, I mean, you can see this, so there's nothing to hide. It's open to all of us. Oh, even that link is taking us to the older one. I'm surprised. So there are a bunch of things that I should probably let them know. Yeah, so if you see that it was 2 months ago, right? So July 2022 was a huge release, but look at that. So it's been 7 months, right?
Okay.
And this is the longer. Yeah, so that's the cadence, right? Yeah, so you can read, so yeah, it's not every month.
Okay.
And there is some stuff broke with the recent one, like I said, the backup one and the password one, which I was playing yesterday. So that's why I had to revert to the VLF example. I was using the backup one, that because backup is like more, like everybody use it. I thought more relevant, but yeah. So that's why you saw that old comment that I have about backup, but that's totally broken. So I'm going to send them some screenshot and so they can fix it.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone? Oh, I see another question from Avi. How the GitHub is secured so no malicious code is injected?
Sorry, say again?
How the GitHub, I guess the repo of Microsoft, how is it secured so no malicious code is injected in there?
Yeah, I don't think so. You can, you always have to submit a PR. I don't know if you have, even on the Microsoft documentation, if you send any spelling correction or anything, they don't get merged right away. There's no auto merge with the Microsoft repo. Because I do send PR all the time with the documentation, examples, this and that. It goes through several iterations. They'll send you email, they'll discuss with you. I even had my PR got merged, and then you all misunderstood, then it got reverted again, and they send me a note why it got reverted. And then I understood what actually they meant. Then I said, change the language. So it goes through a bunch of checks. I'm sure, I don't know the exact process, what they do. I don't work for Microsoft. But, I would trust their repo, I mean, now you might ask, can someone hack it? Probably, right? And hopefully Microsoft will catch it. I mean, this is happening every day, right? I mean, we see in the news every day, right? There's no stop to it. There are thousands of people, that's their full-time job to do bad stuff, that's how they get paid. So, yeah, but yeah, they don't get merged, automatically. So yes, there is a risk, but I think we take risk at certain level with anything we do, right? Any code we use and all that. So
yeah, makes sense. Thanks. Well, I guess that's it. I don't see any other questions. So I guess we've done it. Thank you very much, Tayo.
oh, thank you. Thank you
Great
for hosting
session.
me. Yeah. Thanks. I'll see you again.
I think
then.
this is very, very useful stuff for a lot of our community members.
Yes. Yes. I find it very useful. So yeah, so I'll fix those things. I'll probably take me some time. I'll probably send you a GitHub link tomorrow once I refresh everything. But these are good feedbacks. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Bye.
Bye.